Hello, everyone, and thanks for tuning in to Voices of Resiliency, a podcast exploring the impact of crisis on children and youth. We partnered with Sherry from Lead Services, and our topic is disasters. We are a group of 5 fourth-year Bachelor of Child Studies students at Mount Royal University, completing our capstone project. This season's focus is children coming from war-torn countries, so if you want to hear more about that, stay tuned.
Welcome to episode 2. If you tuned into our last episode, we discussed who we are and introduced our partnering organization, Lead Services, created by Sherry Haslam Easterbrook, who we have in the studio again with us today. If you missed that and want to hear more about what we discussed, it's currently available on YouTube and Spotify with more locations to follow. Today, we're switching gears and are excited to share insights with you on the resilience of refugees coming from war-torn countries. My name is Kaylee.
I'm Alyssa.
I'm Sheldon.
I'm Willa.
And I'm Zainab.
Today we have a guest speaker in the studio with us, but before we introduce him, our topic for this podcast is resilience. But what is resilience and how does it relate toward children, youth, and families coming from war-torn countries?
I think that's a really great question, Sheldon. Resilience is known as the capacity to recover from hardships, a power that's difficult to articulate, but as we see, refugees portray it every day as they are starting to adapt in unfamiliar countries and adapt to their new world. Imagine for a moment someone being forced to abandon everything they have ever known, the house they grew up in, the friends they played and shared their time with, and the neighborhood they have belonged to, which suddenly vanishes. However, from the refugees, we not only hear sorrow in their voices, but as well as resilience, a path that represents their strength and courage.
I agree, and thank you, Zainab. Today we have Hamza Ismaiel as our guest speaker. We invited him to speak today after he did a presentation in one of our classes on the impacts of immigration. He has a vast knowledge on the immigration process for children and families from war-torn countries, as well as the importance of resilience throughout this process. Hello, Hamza.
Good morning. Hi.
Would you mind sharing with us and listeners a little bit more about yourself?
Of course. First of all, thank you for having me. My name is Hamza Ismaiel. My background is Syrian. I'm Canadian as well. I have been living in Canada for 5 years. Being an immigrant, I was really excited and interested in also providing support and assistance to communities. So I have been in the resettlement field and working with government-assisted refugees for 5 years now. I have worked for organizations in the provinces of Alberta and BC, different organizations and service providers. And within that field, I had the privilege of meeting many clients and immigrants from different countries around the world, starting from the minute they land in Canada until they are totally settled in the community. It's a long process. It's a long journey to each individual of the immigrants, and at the same time, being an immigrant myself, I get to experience and understand what they go through, the psychology and the multiple layers they have, traumas, what they have experienced back home, at the same time going to another country, waiting to be resettled into the third country, which in this case is Canada. It could be any other country in the world. We work with clients who have high physical and mental needs at the same time. That's where I step in. A little disclaimer today is I will be representing myself, and I'm really excited to share the experience.
Well, let me just say thank you so much for taking the time to come. It's very generous of you. Mm-hmm. And we appreciate your time here and sharing your experience with us so that we can better understand and share that with more people. Mm-hmm. So thank you.
Thank you. It's a pleasure. And I'm always looking forward for advocating for the communities of refugees resettled in Canada.
Thank you for sharing all that and being here today. Mm-hmm. I think we're going to start off with our questions. And our first one is, what are some of the most significant hurdles that you have maybe seen or heard about with that families face during the immigration process, especially with children in tow. If you can speak on that.
Of course. So the immigration process is complex and often lengthy. It has the immigrants go through many phases, starting from leaving the country and then going to a second country, which is usually temporary. In this case, waiting to move to another one. Now, after they land, they face multiple hurdles, starting from housing, healthcare, education, and the language barrier. If we're talking about the most significant hurdle, is housing here in Alberta and in Canada in general, right? We have so many, not only clients or not only immigrants, we also have people who were born in Canada also moving to Alberta. Again, in general, we have a housing crisis in Canada, which is making it really difficult for families, especially with children. And when we're talking about children growing up or coming from war-torn countries, we can't. We should always talk about the challenges the parents experience and face, because it always reflects and shows in like the environment or the small environment of the family at home. The dynamics, if the kids will be affected by the challenges the parents are having. When it comes to housing, it's really challenging, as I said, starting from the high demand we're experiencing in Calgary in particular. So not finding a suitable house for the family is a big challenge, because the parents would be moving from one place to another until they find a good one or a suitable one for the kids. Adding to that the high prices, the high rentals here, also the availability of the houses here. The second hurdle the families usually are having, whether the families I have worked with in BC, in Vancouver, or in Calgary, Alberta, within like different organizations, is also the language barrier. The language barrier is being now another challenge with the long waiting lists of the English schools in general. I think that's across the country now because of the high number of immigrants landing. Now, when it comes to the language barrier, I know that like the schools are doing a great job, but at the same time, they are really overwhelmed with people or the clients calling or organizations following up to see if the client is going to be placed into school. Now, I know we're talking about the parents or the family in general, but again, that also affects the kids in a way that they feel kind of isolated if they don't speak the language fluently, or if they probably feel that the parents are not confident yet to speak fluently. So here comes the role of the organizations and the service providers to first explain to the family and to the kids that you don't have to speak fluently now. No one is expecting you to speak fluently. And always remember that English is not your first language, so you don't have to be hard on yourself. So we always explain and give some insights to the kids that no one should be expecting you to speak fluently. Now, when it comes to the society or the community about the language barrier that the kids are having, so we all need to understand that if someone doesn't speak the language fluently, they have first language and they have an entire world in that language. So it's also how we perceive someone who probably make mistakes in English. I make mistakes, although I have a bachelor's degree in English literature.
We all do.
Yeah. At the beginning, I was like, no, I'm embarrassed. I'm not confident. Even when I came, I didn't have the confidence to speak. And scientifically, it's the speaking skill is the last skill that develops in the brain. So we always need to remind ourselves about that, and also remind the families about it. So we have so many kids coming to us, and they say, people are talking to us, we are understanding, but we can't initiate a conversation, we can't respond. So it's fine, it's okay, it's a matter of time. Other than housing and the language barrier, we also have the challenge of the healthcare. That's a big topic as well. Accessing healthcare, accessing mental health. Sometimes, or when it comes to mental health, to me, it's priority. That shouldn't be neglected. There shouldn't be any waiting times to access that service.
Especially when you're coming from a war-torn country. That intervention.
With all the traumas and all the experiences, the challenges, we have so many families, they have seen aspects, or they have seen war, they have, even with the kids. Sometimes the war, in certain cases, we have, for example, Syrians who moved to Turkey because of the war, and then they died because of the earthquake, which was more impactful in Turkey. Now, again, that's a natural disaster, but it adds another layer to the trauma to the kids. Some kids, after they landed, and they are above the age of 5 or 6, but still, because of the traumas, they like no communication, no interaction with others, because of the trauma, because of what they have been through.
I didn't even think about the whole housing thing.
In those situations when they are trying to find housing and get into the education system, like what occurs if those two things can't happen? Are they in a place of limbo? Like what's happening?
There's always hope, and there's always plan to not let that happen. There's always a plan, structure, to accommodate and to address these challenges. First of all, after the families land, they are usually accommodated. They're actually always accommodated in temporary accommodation until they secure a permanent one. In all the agencies and organizations, there's always staff dedicated to assist them secure a permanent accommodation. Now, the challenge is after the first year of arrival. The first year of arrival, and if we're talking about government-assisted refugees, they are being supported by the federal government. Now, after the first year ends, the challenge is if the kids don't speak the language, or the parents don't speak English. They're still waiting for enrollment in English school, and they don't know how to navigate. Now, what happens after the first year ends, after the first year of assistance, financial assistance, they switch to the provincial one, which makes it harder because the funding is less. The benefits are way lower than what they were getting from the federal government, which also leads to more difficulty in finding houses or accommodations here.
Yeah, it's really unfortunate that our government or we have 122 million forcibly displaced people in the world, but we don't have any place to accommodate, not enough room. I can only imagine what that temporary housing is like. Do you have any insight towards that?
Temporary accommodation is usually hotels or welcome centers by each organization, and it's usually there for the clients after they arrive. Of course, within this period, they start doing the basic services. Let's say, for example, the SIN, applying to SIN, health card, the very basic services until they move out, and that's where another staff member steps in to follow up.
Thanks for sharing. So the next question we were wondering is if you had, on the topic of resilience, we were wondering if you could share any inspiring stories of children or youth who have overcome significant challenges and demonstrated that resilience. Of course, only share what you feel comfortable with or can share.
Of course,
yeah.
Of course. We have so many stories. We hear so many stories. And then sometimes the families, the kids, tell us about what they have experienced before. We hear stories about their relatives, about their family members. We need to understand that when immigrants land here or refugees, they need to talk. They need to share. They need to tell you about their experience. They get really excited and invested in telling you how they felt, what happened in details. Because when they come here, you are the only contact person for them. You are kind of like a bridge between the kids and their families and the community. So if you're not there, it might be a problem for them. So many stories from kids and their families. I think one significant story or experience I had with one of the kids. After they land, usually we do our initial assessment to understand the dynamics or to see if sometimes there are invisible observation. Sometimes it's a word the kid might say, and you get some insights about what's happening, about them growing up, about the parents' dynamics. If you do home visits as well, you get to also experience that and see it. Now, this kid, after they came to Canada, I remember that the mom shared that he's very active, he's always excited, never a dull moment, he's always moving. But in reality, I didn't see that. We didn't see that. He was withdrawing from any gathering, any social group with other kids, whether his age or younger, any activities, he's always isolated. So that kid, also after they moved out and he was enrolled in school, at the same time the teachers shared that he's isolated, he's away, doesn't move a lot, which was concerning to the family, to the parents, and even to us. Mm-hmm. And it's very sensitive to approach it with kids. I think you know better. Mm-hmm. It was really sensitive. So what happened was it was a matter of time. It was intervention to address these concerns from the parents, from the teacher. It was a group of it was a team working with this kid, but backstage, mm-hmm. behind the scenes. Mm-hmm. Parents, teachers, other families indirectly to see if there are any indicators of course, we never ask directly, or we never share any identifying information with other families. It took him some time. It took us some time to sensitively address that concern with the teacher, to the level that the teacher started saying that this kid now learning English, and now he speaks it fluently. Not only that, now he's an active member in the school. In the activities, he's kind of representative of his class. And that was a very inspiring story to not only myself, to all of us, to experience the improvement and to really see how that changes and improves with your clients, with the families and their kids.
Mm-hmm. Prior to this podcast recording, I was doing some research about the refugee experience, and I was watching some TED Talks, and I'm just like always amazed by the resilience of like some of the stories that they were saying. Like it's crazy the things that they have to go through, and then the way that they can just turn things around. Not that it's that simple, not to say that in any way, shape, or form, but just I don't know. It was so amazing to hear about and see and.
So many inspiring stories.
Wow. Yeah.
We we have also stories about clients, again, in different organizations, different experiences, but some of them, after they land, of course, if we consider the cultural shock, the first few days, I'm excited, I'm in North America, now I'm safe, which is great. But then in reality, after a month, let's say, when they get to experience the new systems, the gaps, which exist in all countries, everywhere, like different levels. It's also about managing the expectations, because once you are in the second country after you leave home, and you're waiting to be resettled, your mind, like you're always thinking that once I leave this country, once I am finally resettled in the third one, I will start achieving my dreams. I need to do this and that. I need to have the most beautiful house, the nicest car. So the expectations. We also, like, there's the weather, there's politics, and in their minds, like, that doesn't exist because they fled because of that. So when they land here, I'm like, oh, they have it here, again, different level, and that's the cultural shock. The next day, they might wake up, I don't like Canada, I don't like Canadians, my country is nicer, I'm highly educated, I had this job back home, and the first one is going to be the same. So managing expectations and the cultural shock, it's like good and bad days, as I explained it. But I always share with my clients that it's okay if you're feeling down, if you're feeling kind of like trapped. It's psychologically that happens. You're a new country, it's a new environment. Even if you move to another city within your country, it's the same experience. It's not as challenging, but you will have the same difficulties. So we always try to have these conversations, to have this connection with our clients and their kids to help them integrate more in the society.
Sorry, I'm going to jump in for a second here. Thank you. Hijacking the conversation. I'm curious to know if you see a difference. Like, what is the difference that you see between children and adults in terms of that ability to manage expectations? And like, kids have a completely different thought process and mindset. They're thinking about totally different things than adults are. And so with the children that you've worked with and the youth that you've worked with, what's their set of expectations that they're hoping to
between the kids and like the parents.
Yeah, because like
in that
adults are
sense.
thinking about housing and employment, and they come with, lots of immigrants that I work with come highly educated, and so they land here, and it's a little bit deflating to realize that, oh, my credentials don't translate, and I'm not going to have the same kind of respected position that I had back home. But kids aren't like that. Kids don't think in those terms, and they don't see that the same way. And so my curiosity is, when you're working with children, what do you see in terms of their resilience and ability to manage their expectations in this new environment?
Okay, so when we're talking about kids and managing expectations or having better integration more than like the parents, it's way easier. It's way easier. There's more flexibility there. Again, because of the age difference at the same time, the children will not be as concerned as the parents, right? Because the parents are often thinking, or they are often in survival mode, right? So the way we see it as adults is different from how the kids are seeing it. So to the families, to the parents, it's about securing a place, like place to sleep in, to eat, like to feel warm. To the kids, for example, oh, there's always going to be home, like there's always going to be a roof. There's always going to be food, right? Even if there isn't, it's not like a big deal as we see it as adults. So it's way easier with kids. They are more flexible, and they are more, the perception of these challenges or these expectations are different from the adults.
Yes. Thank you for sharing the stories before as well. I totally agree with the teamwork part, because when I was as a practicum student, I was working at a school, and there was this child that came in, and he didn't speak English at all, and it took a while to build that relationship with him, but the teamwork with the teachers, with the counselors, it helped a lot. And I was there for about a year, and I saw a really big difference by the end of it. And I think that's a very rewarding thing to see as well when you're working in this.
Very rewarding.
Yeah. And on that topic, with your experience in immigrations, how do you believe the immigration process impacts the mental health and well-being of these children and youth?
When we're talking about the immigration process, again, it starts really early with the parents from leaving home, from leaving their country. In many cases, the parents had to just like leave with one bag, sometimes no bags, no paperwork, passports, IDs, nothing. And in many cases, I can talk about Syria since my background is Syrian. Many Syrians were forced to leave, to flee the country. They didn't have time. And even the kids did not understand what's happening. They don't know what a war is. I mean, they know probably basic idea about it, but they don't know how complicated that is and and the consequences after. When we're talking about the challenges or the immigration process in this case, it adds another layer of anxiety to the parents, starting from leaving, surviving. Many families, whether in Syria, Africa, in other countries as well, they had to walk to cross borders. And we're not talking about 5 minutes here. We're talking about a month or two. With the kid, even with one kid, it's really difficult. But sometimes they have more than one kid. We're talking about 3, 4, or sometimes more. And they had to walk cross borders to reach to other countries where it's safer. Other families had to live in boats in the sea, and many of them lost their lives, relatives, kids. Now, and they left them there. They left them there, and they came. Now, that's resilience. That's resilience. It's when that happens. How do you react to it? How do you respond to that experience? How do you see it? And I think refugees sometimes are surprised by how resilient they are because they don't see it. They don't have the time to think about it. They don't have time to honor their experience, their journey, or to reflect, to just like pause and reflect. They don't have that privilege that we do sometimes. So to just sit and reflect and plan, even a planning, like in life, you need to have an action plan with like in your career and your personal life. They don't have that privilege because they don't have time. They don't have the capacity. Probably they know or they are aware, but not now. So that is also affecting their mental health. The immigration process is long in many cases. We're talking about from 1 year until like 10 years. Some families were waiting for 10 years. In some countries, just until they were called and to be prepared to travel to Canada. So it's not an easy one. It's a lengthy one. It adds a lot of anxiety to the parents as well.
That's really hard to even hear about that. Yeah.
Yeah.
I can't imagine what they even go through. Like, it's hard to hear it. You can't even imagine everything that's going on in their brains, how they're actually going to recover from this, or are they actually ever going to recover?
I hope so.
I hope so too, yeah.
Because they experienced different types of traumas from seeing fighting, from seeing any military aspects, to seeing dead bodies in the streets. So it's unfortunate to say that some families found that because it was normal to see, because that was reality there. But it's harder when the kids are seeing that. And that is not being addressed. Now, when service providers are observing that, yes, like referrals, we do referrals, we try to have them access all the healthcare resources and mental health resources as soon as possible, but reality is different. Reality is way different with the long wait times in our healthcare system. After they land, they face additional stressors. We're talking about the language, whether at school or in the community, if they're out with their family. Another experiences some kids encounter are when the parents are in the community, when they are trying to integrate, and the response might be not suitable or not proper, or it in a way affects the kids seeing the parents also struggling to integrate, to be part of the community. It's not easy, and it's always being stored in the kid's mind. And we know with kids, sometimes one word or certain incident during the day, which is very normal, but the perception is different with kids. And I think, Sherry, you have more insights about the perception of the kids and the exposure to these stressors in the community and with their parents.
Yeah, well, yeah, thank you for sharing all that. It's a lot, and hopefully something like this, a podcast like this and the work that we're doing can help educators like us help those kids and those families build more tools to get their mental health. And just speaking on that, do you have any interventions that you've found to be effective in helping children build resilience, especially in schools or childcare? It could be things to help cultural preservation, community social programs, policies, or anything else you see fit.
Of course, I think the important component here is, as you said, the incorporation of the cultural preservation. It's very important that the kids are aware of their culture, where they come from, of the values they have had, from their parents growing up. Back home, if they were born there and grew up there for a few years. So that's really essential to have here. When we're talking about these strategies, we also need to be aware of the community programs. Community programs, it could be at the library, public library, any community centers, to also include the kids in the activities, and all the activities that are happening there, to include them. That also helps them integrate more into the society. Another one is to probably we need to prioritize mental health. We need to be talking about it always and always and always. And when we're talking, or when we are working with immigrants, there's the part of that immigrant could be coming from somewhere that probably has different practices of very normal activities that we do, like going to the supermarket, taking transit, going to the doctor, booking appointments, the importance of being on time, accessing different resources in the society. So that also is affecting their mental health. So we always need to have these talks about mental health, whether in a podcast like this or in other conversations. It's really essential, because we have families coming from places where mental health, or even talking about mental health, is not okay. There's stigma. Or they say, oh, if I'm accessing mental health and I'm seeing a doctor, that means I'm crazy. No. So it's important to explain to them that it's as if you're going to do some blood work, just as a regular checkup. And based on the results, you see how you're doing, that doesn't mean you're sick. It's more about well-being. So that is always the approach. Of course, different people have different approaches, but that topic has to be discussed. Again, it's case by case. The way you approach it with, for example, Sheldon, is different from the way I approach it with Sherry. So we need to always have these talks about mental health and accessing these resources.
Well, thank you. Gosh, I really appreciate that you bring in the conversation about culture and having access to cultural activities, because I think, generally speaking, the general population has a misperception about the importance of that. And the thing is that, especially for children, you have to first be rooted in something. And inherently, biologically, the strongest place to be rooted is your heritage, your cultural background. And that's where the opportunity to grow and flourish and graft in other influences as they support you and as they are good for you comes, right? But first you have to be rooted in that thing. And when you come from somewhere else, it's just natural to gravitate to what you know or what you knew, and then be able to figure out how can I. That's right, yeah. And it gives you confidence and security and the ability to branch out a little bit, or have the inclination sort of to try new things or reach out to new things. When you talk about mental health and the importance of that in the family context, especially when we're talking about people coming from countries where that is taboo to speak about, I always think the younger we go, the easier it is to bring home. And so when we are when we have the opportunity to influence the younger children and do a little bit of work with them on their mental health and give them some language to use, they bring that home. And over time, that starts to sort of bleed into the family culture, and things start to change. But I really
they
do.
acquire it. Like
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
in their system.
Yeah.
It's in their system now.
Yeah.
So that's why it's really important to have these conversations with kids. Again, it's the approach, whether with the kid or the parents, and it's more sensitive with the kid. Sometimes it's not, right? Sometimes we think that this kid, if we're going to have this conversation with that kid, we need to plan it. Sometimes we get stressed about it. I don't know how I will approach it, what the response will be, or the reaction. If that happens, what should I say? But sometimes we overthink it. We overthink it, but that has to happen. That has to happen. We need to have these conversations. For the kids, when the kids are telling you about their culture, there's always this excitement they have telling you the story. They want you to feel it, to have the same reaction to it. They try their best to include you in that, to have you part of that feeling, of that memory. So to them, it makes them feel good. And again, it's really important for them to be connected to their culture and to their heritage. Even if they are in a new country, that doesn't mean they neglect either background, right? So it's really critical, and it's really sensitive in many cases, because the dilemma with the kid or with the parents is, am I from that country, like their home country, or am I Canadian now? So the answer is you could be both. Like you are both. You're not Syrian, for example. I always say I'm not fully Syrian. I'm not fully Canadian. I'm Hamza. It's a combination of different experiences, different journeys. Also, my reaction, my response to events in life is different from my reaction 10 years ago. With kids, sometimes it's easier. It's more smooth.
So just following with that, what is some advice you might give some individuals or other organizations who want to make an impact on the lives of children who come to Canada or other countries?
That's a very important question. Thank you, Sheldon. The first thing is to listen, just to listen. That's very simple. That's very easy to listen. And I know, like now with inflation, with all the chaos in the world, it's hard. Mm-hmm. We need to dedicate some time when we're having or when we are meeting kids who are immigrants or their parents, their family. It's really essential to listen to them, to have these conversations, and always try to think of what's beyond the basic services, right? Again, if I teach the client on like how to take transit or how to access healthcare, how to book an appointment, but it's more than that. Mm-hmm. Right? It's more than that. It's the psychology component of the immigration journey. For organizations or for our federal government is to always not see it as a political matter, to not address these concerns or provide these services for any political gain, if I may say, and for organizations and individuals and for all of us, we always need to prioritize mental health. It's okay if we are depressed or if we are anxious. It's a very wide spectrum. Now, a very important topic here for our organizations and the government is to talk about decolonizing mental health, right? It's more than diagnosis. It's more than saying, okay, you have general anxiety disorder. Here's the medication. You take it. I see you in 1 month, and we'll see how you feel. But it's more than that. Even with therapy, it's not only, of course, they listen always, effective listening, but that's not enough. There has to be some impactful strategies that are away from numbers, statistics. We can't do that as well without improving our healthcare system, which is like we have a big gap in our healthcare system, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Hamza. This has been an absolutely fantastic conversation, and we really appreciate you sharing your experiences, insights, and stories. We all here believe that you are doing fantastic work and for advocating for children and refugees, and we just want you to keep it up.
Thank you very much for having me today. It's an honor to be with you today, and I'm really glad we have had this conversation about children coming from war-torn countries. The easiest way to think about it is try to imagine you are moving, you are forced. Mm-hmm. Like it's not a vacation, you're not traveling. You are forced to leave your place. Think of your home, the one that you grew up in for like probably from the time you were born until you were 18 or like when you left. People don't have that. Immigrants don't have that. Like they don't know how that feels. They don't know what that is. Now, if you can imagine moving to another country and dealing with the system, navigating through the systems, another component is because of the war, you didn't have chance to access employment, education, and you don't speak the language. And you are now in a foreign land, and you have to survive. Like whether you are able to, or you're not, you're capable of, or you are having the capacity or not, you have no choice. So here comes the resilience of the families and the kids.
Exactly. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. Thank you so much, Hamza. Before our listeners tune out, we did want to let you know that we have a webinar happening in March that we'd love to have you attend. So more details are to come for that, so stay tuned.
And that is all for today's episode on resilience of refugees. Make sure you guys take care of your mental health as well. Mm-hmm. And we hope to see you next time on another episode on Insights for Early Childhood Educators. Once again, my name is Zainab.
I am Alyssa.
I'm Sheldon.
I'm Kaylee.
And I'm Willa. And this is Voices of Resiliency. Voices of Resiliency was written by Alyssa Belleville, Sheldon Copas, Kaylee Lachance, Zainab Nadim, and Willa Marshall. It is edited and directed by Willa Marshall and Kaylee Stobart. Our in-studio crew is Kaylee Stobart and Tarek Chono Campos. A special thanks to the Mount Royal University Society of Broadcasting and Sherry Haslam Easterbrook with lead services. Music is by Devere Silver from Pixabay.